Is there really not a place in the NFL for a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders? I think there is.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Let's talk about it. Does Shedeur Sanders have a place in the NFL anymore, right? Do quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders have a place in the NFL? There's a sort of this notion that because he's not a dynamic dual threat quarterback, he's not as exciting as a prospect like Cam Ward or Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe. And to that, I tell you, the NFL has shown no signs of that. Now, let me explain. Right now in the NFL, I think there's a handful of quarterbacks that are sort of clouding the judgment of how we view the entire league. And I don't necessarily think that's fair for the rest of these guys because obviously you could win Super Bowls with a guy like Nick Foles, and you could win Super Bowls with a guy like Tom Brady. We've seen it happen, right? And when I say guys like that, I mean guys who are not super athletic. Matt Stafford, same thing, not super athletic, right? Tom Brady, and I think I'll just start running through the list. Tom Brady never had the biggest arm. He was a master at preparing. He was a master at going through his reads. He was a master at understanding defenses. Who does Shedeur Sanders train with? Tom Brady. Nick Foles, obviously a very different situation. He comes in at the end of the year, plugs in for Carson Wentz, who was on his way to an MVP season, but that's a discussion for a different day, probably a different show as well. And Nick Foles comes in, leads the Eagles to a Super Bowl over Tom Brady. Matthew Stafford, he's never been the most mobile. He has a big arm. He's tough, but he's not fast. He's not making plays with his legs where he's going to run down the field for 40 yards or whatever. So there's a couple examples. Now, let me tell you about the quarterbacks that are skewing this. And you're probably wondering where I'm getting this, like what inspired this tangent. Well, Mel Kiper Jr. was on his podcast either yesterday or the day before and sort of revealed that NFL teams are all in on Cam Ward. He said, made some calls yesterday. Cam Ward seems to be the consensus guy. And then he said after that, he was talking about, this is him saying what he was told. Shedeur's not really what we're looking for. The NFL is not really looking for that kind of quarterback now. And I get that, right? In a perfect world, every NFL team is going to want a guy like Josh Allen, Lamar, Mahomes, where it's like, specifically Lamar and Josh, where they're like huge freak athletes that happen to have huge arms and can also pick apart a defense with their arm. Patrick Mahomes, same thing, right? Everyone wants Patrick Mahomes. Caleb Williams was the number one pick, or he was solidified as the number one pick since the moment he took over at Oklahoma because he resembled that of Patrick Mahomes and sort of had that flair of like, he can make things happen. He can throw from all these different angles. That being said, there is still a market for quarterbacks who don't do that because guess what? 95% of the quarterbacks in the NFL don't do that, right? There's guys who are mobile, and then there's guys who are elite athletes and elite at creating with their legs. So we're going to go through a couple of different studies, and I'm just going to sort of base it off of who I've seen Shedeur compared to, right? So according to PFF, the top graded quarterbacks in the NFL, we could go through the 16 of them, the top half of the league. Lamar Jackson, and we'll count it, we'll right hand for me, dual threat guy who's elite with his legs. Other hand is a guy who can make plays with his legs but doesn't rely on it. Lamar Jackson, obviously elite. Joe Burrow, not a guy who can burn people with his legs, but he makes plays with his legs. Justin Herbert, I'd put him in that category. I don't feel like he runs as often as some of these other quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, he's in that category with Lamar. Josh Allen, that category with Lamar. Baker Mayfield, he's a guy, and I think a lot of people may be turned off by this comparison. Baker Mayfield is a guy who uses his legs effectively, and I think Shedeur Sanders could do just that. I think he was instructed at Colorado to not do that because at Jackson State, he ran around a little bit. So he's shown that it's there. He just hasn't done it at the Power 4 level, or at least he wasn't asked to. Geno Smith, he's on this other group over here, right, where mobile, not the craziest dual threat guy. Patrick Mahomes, I'll put him in this other group, but he's kind of a tweener because obviously I don't think he's dynamic as a runner. I just think he's a really savvy runner. Russell Wilson, yes, he's over here. He's not mobile anymore, right? He's stayed in the league because he could still make these plays. Back in the day, Russell Wilson would probably be in this other group. Kyler Murray, it's 5-5 right now. Kyler Murray's a dynamic athlete. Sam Darnold, good athlete, not great. 6-5. CJ Stroud, good athlete, not great. 7-5 over here. Brock Purdy, same thing. 8-5. Jared Goff, who a lot of people compare to Shedeur Sanders, he's over here. 9-5. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has never been a freak athlete. He's always been someone who's good at moving around in the pocket. He's over here. And then Bryce Young. I would put him over here as well. So we're at 11 or 12. What was that? 11 or 12 to 4 or 5 because they had a couple guys tied in there. So an overwhelming amount of the best quarterbacks in the league are guys who have skill sets more similar to Shedeur Sanders than they do to, say, Lamar Jackson. Another thing, let's look at the stats leaders in the NFL, right? I think that's another important thing because we're hearing like, oh, there's not a place in the NFL for a guy like Shedeur anymore. Let's just look at who leads the league in passing. It's Joe Burrow, it's Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold. Those are your top 5. None of those guys are elite athletes. Then it's Lamar, it's Mahomes, then it's Rodgers, Herbert, Purdy, right? 7 out of the top 10 quarterbacks in passing yards are guys who have skill sets more similar to Shedeur, where it's like not all these guys have huge arms, right? They don't all have these cannon of an arms like Cam Ward, and they don't all have these flashy like sidearm releases like Cam Ward. But guess what? There's a spot for him. Average yards per completion. Lamar Jackson actually leads the league, 8.8. Then it's Goff, Purdy, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Cousins, Allen, Carr, right? So again, guys that are not mobile, or I won't say not mobile, but guys who aren't barn burners, if you will, or super fast, right? So I think that, and we'll final one, QBR, Lamar, Josh, top 2 guys. Then it's Joe, Jaden Daniels, Jordan Love, Goff, Purdy, Mahomes, Murray. So that's where QBR, I think, is where you start seeing a little bit of it lean to the guys that are mobile. But that being said, all it takes is for Shedeur Sanders to end up in the right system, right? You give him a good offensive line. You give him a good run game, which he hasn't had or didn't have at Colorado. You could use the play action to your advantage. You can use his sort of savviness and smarts to your advantage because Shedeur Sanders is one of the smartest quarterbacks in college football, or was one of the smartest quarterbacks in college football, right? He rarely made mistakes. He completed 74% of his passes. And honestly, I think, how many interceptions did he have this year? I think he had some of the flukiest interceptions I've ever seen, where it was wrong route. It was that one, I think, was against North Dakota State, or Nebraska. I think it was North Dakota State, where he threw it and it hit the guy on the ground and like went to someone, like 10 picks. And I think probably not half, but a chunk of them were off of flukes. So he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's accurate. He's really smart. Tom Brady's in his corner, and I don't know how involved Tom Brady will be in training him because obviously he's not going to be on Tom Brady's team unless the Raiders draft him. So I think there's definitely a spot in the NFL for Shedeur Sanders. I just think what Mel Kiper was told is sort of unrealistic, right? It's like we're looking for tall, athletic. We're looking for freak athletes with a cannon who can diagnose a defense, right? It's like, okay, well, like it's like when people talk about their perfect significant other, like their ideal man or woman. They're like tall, athletic, great personality. It's like they want all these perfect things. And like, guess what? 99% of the world is not tall, great personality, in shape, athletic, whatever it is. So Shedeur Sanders definitely has a spot in the NFL. I am fully confident. I believe in him more than any quarterback in this class. And that's not me just saying that as someone who's covering Colorado. That's me saying that as I'm looking at the rest of this class. And Cam Ward, I just feel like I don't know what the problem is or what my problem is with Cam Ward. I see something in his game where it's like, yes, he has flashes Mahomes, but there's also these like really boneheaded turnovers that he always had, or the throws that he would make just flat-footed, like nonchalant. The nonchalant thing kills me. I don't know if it's going to work in the NFL, if he'll even do it, if they'll try to kill that out of him. Jackson Dart is another quarterback where I'm pretty high on him, but I think I would trust Shedeur more than him to not make these big mistakes, as we saw in that Florida game. Jalen Milroe, don't really trust. I feel like if anyone could have benefited from going back to college, it would have been him and Quinn Ewers. So I trust Shedeur Sanders more than anyone in this class. And I don't think that there's not really a market for him anymore, because guess what? At the end of the day, the NFL is a business, right? Is it not? So at the end of the day, why not give Shedeur Sanders a chance? At the worst case scenario, your quarterback is one of the most popular in the sport. So if he doesn't work out as a player, at least you have that, right? I think all teams want to sell jerseys. They want to sell tickets. And a lot of these bad teams don't always do that. And Shedeur Sanders will for sure do just that. When we come back, Coach Prime is 5-star hunting. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I've never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Coach Prime is 5-star hunting, and I like who we're after. Let's just put it that way. So we're kind of getting to this point in the 2026 recruiting class where guys are starting to narrow things down. Now, not everyone's doing this, so there's a lot of recruits where it's like they're probably still, I don't say in the early stages, but they're not trimming their list down to 10, 5 or whatever. But a lot of these guys want to be committed before their season starts, which is August, September-ish. And although we still got a ways away, it's a long process for them. They got to figure out visits. They got to figure out NIL packages these days. You know, that's a big thing. They have to figure out what coach do they like? What scheme do they like? Where does this coach see them playing? For a guy like Colorado or a school like Colorado where they have guys playing both ways, or some schools where it's like, hey, you're a receiver, but we're going to recruit you as a DB. So Colorado's been hit or miss on, or not hit or miss, but Colorado started emerging, poor choice of wording there, in some of these top schools. And one of the latest guys to include them in the top school is Cedrian Morgan. He's down to 6 schools. He's 6'5", 200 pounds, wide receiver from Alabama. And he is just an absolute dog. Let me tell you. Like I said, anytime I see a receiver that's 6'5", I get that Will Shepherd vibe. He's a monster. And this is his top 6. Alabama, Colorado, Clemson, Auburn, Georgia, Florida. So it's basically a who's who in terms of SEC. And then there's Colorado. And I think when you consider where Colorado used to be, they would never get a program like, or never get, they would never get a recruit like this. They got an official visit for him because he's going to visit all of his top 6. So they're going to get him in Boulder. Whether or not that's before any of these other schools is to be determined. But again, this is the scouting report on him. Verified at the time this was written, he was just shy of 6'4", so now he's listed at 6'5", so he's definitely grown. Possesses growth potential to add another 15, 20 pounds, which is giving me Jeremiah Smith vibes. So imagine a receiver 6'5", 220, 215, whatever. Good athleticism, primarily operating out of the slot, which is unique for his size. Natural mover with loose hips, shows slight ankle stiffness on in-breaking routes, but exhibits some short area wiggle and is elusive in the open field. Highly productive run after catch threat. Utilizes his size and frame well at the catch point. Displays natural pass catching ability down the field. Shows the ability to change gears and create separation in space. Unique blend of size, speed, and athleticism as he continued to round into form and add some nuance to his game. Performed better than expected at the Future 50 and was excellent on the hoof. Expect to take another leap as a junior. Will be interesting to see where his body type wise 2 years from now, but it's trending in the right direction. Multi-sport athlete too. He plays basketball, runs track and field. He does a little bit of everything. And so for Colorado, I think they're taking some big swings at these top tier receivers because they want Julian Lewis to have a top tier receiver to throw to. And I think this is when you're recruiting a top receiver like this, or even Chris Henry Jr., who's coming to Ohio State, both 5 stars, right? You're recruiting them because you want them a part of your program, but you're also recruiting them was happy, right? You want to go, hey, we're building around you, right? We are fully believing in you and your abilities, and we want to make sure that you are set up to succeed, so you could take us to the next level, so we could turn this into a program or changes from a program that went from, I don't know, like irrelevant AF to one of the biggest talking points in sports. So I think there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Colorado fan. I think Coach Prime is good for about 1 5-star every year. It looks like this year that 5-star is going to come via receiver, at least now. I also think there's going to come a point in time. I don't know what it would take, right? Maybe more wins, maybe some more transfers going there or something. But I do think there's going to be a point in time where Coach Prime ends up getting more than 1 5-star, right? I posted a poll on my X account, Locked on Buffs. Go check it out. And the question was over under 1.5 classes. So either is it going to happen this year, or will it take 2 more years, basically, that Deion Sanders brings in multiple 5-stars. He's yet to do it. It wouldn't shock me if he does, though, right? He's never brought in multiple 5-stars in the same class. It's a very difficult task to do if you're not a SEC program named Alabama, Texas, Georgia, or Clemson, or Oklahoma. Like, there's 32 5-stars per class, right? A lot of the times they end up at SEC schools, and then a lot of time, or a handful of times, it's like a kid wants to stay local. So it's not as easy as you think, but I think if anyone could do it, it'd be Coach Prime. So he is 5-star hunting, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I really like the swings he's taken, right? I think it shows that, like, he's invested in this program, right? I think if there was like a drop off in recruiting effort, I'd be like, okay, he's probably going to pull the rug and pull the plug on this and just leave after this one season, because I do think that there's some people are of the mindset like, hey, he's going to stay the 1 year to prove a point and then he's going to leave. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll just have to wait and see. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit of hoops. I'm going to give you an update on Colorado's basketball season. Hint, hint, it's not great. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Let's talk about it. Colorado hoops. It's not looking great, right? They had a nice run in the tournament last year, and I think everyone was confident that Tad Boyle would be able to sort of build on that momentum, right? Because I don't know, I feel like he had shown signs of momentum. It was 21-12 in 2021, 2022. Then it was 18-17, not great the next year. 26-11, they make it to the second round last year. And then all of a sudden they're 10-16, and they are the worst team in the Big 12. They're 1-14, 13 games back out of the top spot, which obviously is not going to happen. There's like 7 games left. Overall, they're 10-16. If I didn't say that already, they've lost every game this month except for one, and they're not really keeping these games remotely close, right? This team is just outmatched. They lost pretty much all their talent, and it's just one of those things where I think this is a fireable sort of season for Tad Boyle, right? I think it's hard for him to he just hasn't sustained enough success, right? I think in his first 4 seasons, he made it to the tournament 3 out of the first 4 years. Had a gap year in 2014, 2015, back in the tournament, 15, 16, and then he spent 4 years, which there was no tournament in 2020. So 3 years. They probably would have made it in 2020. But 3 years without it, we'll call it 2 years on, counting the COVID year, 2 years off, and looks like we're going to have another one. So I just don't feel like there's enough consistency, right? I don't know. I just feel like the program's not trending in the right direction. And then you look at how they're doing recruiting wise, and it's like, are we confident, right? Are we confident that this is going to happen for the Buffs? Do we think that this is a big deal, I guess? Or, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's hard to sort of express, where it's like, what I'm trying to say is, sorry, I was trying to pull this up, is I just don't think that he's done enough, right? I think that's the hard part, is he's had enough success to where I wouldn't be shocked if they brought him back, but at the same time, It's like you don't want to keep falling off, and a fall off like this is going to be hard to rebuild from. They have no high school commits. Which probably means they're going to have to really make a late push here, or they're going to have to hit the portal hard, which didn't work out this past year. So I just don't know what Tad Boyle's future in Colorado looks like, but it's not looking bright. You guys comment below. Should Tad Boyle stick around? Should they move on? Let me know what you think. This has been another episode of Locked On Buffs. I will see you guys next week. Hope all of you have a great and safe weekend.